Today on the Surviving the Human Experience podcast, we're going to be exploring the impact of AI on the human experience. I'm excited to welcome back to our show Douglas Muro and Nivea Roman. They are the founders of the Pear Project. So if you were able to hear their previous episodes, they have amazing content, and we're going to share where you can find them at the end because we really want you to connect with them. So, for those who may have missed those episodes, they have created their passion project. We bring them on often to talk about all kinds of amazing topics, whether it's moving from print media to social media, impact of social media. But today we're going to jump into AI. So let's get into a little bit about who Douglas is and who Nivea is, so that if you haven't heard them before, you've got a little background. So Douglas has a vast background in education, training, marketing, information technology, web design and development, and advertising. He was a teacher's aide working with autistic children, and he's worked as an assistant therapist with abused adolescents. He's a writer and editor of a weekly newspaper in northern New Jersey, and he's written promotional commercial for clients. His current mission today is focused on the passion project, lovingly known as the Pear Tree Project. So welcome back to the show, Douglas.
Thank you, Kristen. It's good to be here.
Yes. And so let's talk about Nivea. Nivea Roman is also with us here today. She has a diverse background in the areas of nonprofit, the legal field, wellness, and social work. She has a passion for art, specifically writing and photography, which ultimately led her to the Pear Tree Project. She's worked for several online publications and has a passion for the arts to connect to the human experience. So, welcome back to the show, Nivea.
Thank you, Kristen. Happy to be here.
Yes, I'm excited to have you both back. We have a lot to cover today, and our listeners absolutely love you guys. Every time I'm chatting with the radio station owner, she says, "Bring them back. Everybody wants to hear from the Pear Tree Project." So
Thank
this
you.
is
Thank
really
you.
exciting, yeah, to have you guys with us here today. So, with the exciting advancement in technology, there are also some unintended impacts. And these are some of the areas that people don't like to explore, but we're going to get into that today. We're going to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. We're going there. This is a huge topic, there's a lot to cover. We're going to try to get through as much as we can. We could probably do 3 or 4 episodes on this, but we're going to do our best. So, let's jump in. AI continues to grow in its use and scope. It seems like every day there's a new AI tool that's being created and surfacing. Let's first start off with the good. Since technology's come a long way from dial up internet to search engine development, now we're in the AI space. Progress and forward motion is what defines the term evolution. So, in your opinion, can you share your perspective on the good that's coming out of the use of AI?
Well, I guess technically there's a third guest on this show, and I'm going to let that first question be answered by AI.
Awesome.
AI's good comes from enhancing efficiency and productivity in workplace and daily life, improving healthcare through better diagnostics and personalized treatments, and aiding in complex problem solving from everything from traffic management to climate change. It automates repetitive or dangerous tasks, freeing humans from more creative and empathetic roles, and has the potential to make education and services more accessible. My answer to that question, Kristen,
Yes.
Rod Serling said, someplace between apathy and anarchy is the stance of the thinking human being. He does embrace a cause, he does take position, and he can't allow it to become business as usual. Humanity is our business.
Mm, That's huge. That humanity is our business is so profound to say because a lot of people I've talked to that are very excited about AI use it for just about everything. And, we'll get into concerns a little bit later, but one of the things that really comes to mind is how much of AI is removing that human element, that interaction, that conversation that happens between people when sharing, the critical thinking, all of that stuff. So I am I'm glad that you shared that. That's a very profound quote. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So let's talk about the users. Who would you say are the largest consumers and users of AI currently?
Kristen, while AI has cemented its stronghold in the industries of banking, healthcare, and technology, it is quickly encroaching into many other professions.
Mm,
To the surprise of the unsuspecting, AI is currently being utilized to create some of our favorite music and movies. AI is tugging at our heartstrings, not its own, with sappy commercials on and off social media. This has become a point of contention for some consumers as it highlights their loneliness, inability to relate to these oftentimes perfect images, and their struggle to connect with the messaging of AI and its delivery of it. It's oftentimes cold and remote.
mm. It's interesting that you share that because there's been conversation, and I've seen it pop up, whether you're Googling or wherever you are, about AI having a soul and whether or not it will eventually have what's deemed to be a soul or if it will be soulless. And it's fascinating to watch as people are pulling content from AI and they're just adopting it as their own content, where once upon a time, individuals were the creators of their own content. So much so that even in schools and the teenagers now are using AI for so much. I'm just fascinated. It feels almost like some originality is disappearing with the use of AI.
Yeah, and I would tend to agree with that. I remember music, when I was younger, listening and recording, pressing stop on the tape player and like writing lyrics down. That to this day, I have incorrect.
Mm,
I still don't have those lyrics right, but I remember just a time where you were able to connect to
mhm,
music and to even commercials. And it seems just like you said, some of that feeling, some of that human connection is missing. It's a lot
mhm.
cold, and it's really a travesty to see that go away.
Yeah. Yeah, and to see also how whenever something new emerges, typically there's such a large percentage of the population that are adults that are using something. And fascinating enough, it seems like with the AI aspect, you're seeing more of the younger generation embracing, and of course with, emerging technologies, typically the younger folks do jump on a little sooner. Um, but there's such a large population, all the way down to children, are really being cultivated into this AI culture. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out for sure.
I agree.
Yeah. Okay. So we've gotten through that question. Now I have to ask, do you believe that there should be age restrictions as to who can use AI tools?
Short answer, I do. The alarm bells warning us of the dangers of the introduction and the overconsumption of AI in our everyday lives have been the themes of many a book, a
Mm,
movie, and television show. The themes of isolation, loneliness, perfectionism, and the eventual fall of man have bewildered and entertained us for eons. It
mm.
appears to me we haven't heeded the warnings and are nearing the precipice from which there is no return. I absolutely believe there should be age restrictions when it comes to the use of AI. I believe we have already gone off the rails and seared the brains of children with concepts they are incapable of understanding. The impact of AI on the youth is already evident with their displays of lack of empathy, thinking skills, and preference for screens rather than, you know, real human interaction.
Wow, that is so true. And just to look even at, for example, Facebook or Instagram to see how many AI generated videos and content are being pushed out there now. It's absolutely amazing. And some of this is not necessarily geared towards age appropriate content. And just like, with anything else, as parents or teachers or, caregivers, stewards of our youth, it's really important for us to continue to monitor the uses of the different technologies and different things that are coming out. Because um, one thing that always sticks out to me is that critical thinking piece. So making sure that our youth still have the ability to think through a concept or a topic or their own answer without just automatically having an answer placed in their head. Because, as we know, if you're constantly being molded and shaped by any form of thought or philosophy, it will contribute to us not really using our own brain to think about things.
I absolutely agree with that.
Yeah,
100%.
yeah. All right, let's talk about some of the concerns. I want to jump into this a little bit too, because I think this is important and we've kind of voiced some of them, but I really want to run through this. So, what do you see as the top potential concerns that AI poses to society?
Well, once again, Kristen, I'm going to let AI answer that first.
Okay.
AI says top concerns about AI include bias and discrimination, the spread of misinformation and social manipulation,
Mhm.
threats to privacy and security, potential job displacement and economic inequality, and the risk of unintended or malicious use, including safety issues in critical applications like autonomous weapons. These
Mhm.
risks range from current problems like biased algorithms and fake news to future concerns about losing control of more advanced AI systems. My response, I will once again say the concern. I'll tap into what I consider one of the greatest pieces of literature of all time. Victor Frankenstein created intelligent life and then abandoned his creation. This led to a tragic cycle of violence and misery for the creator and the creature. Mary Shelley's novel explores the moral responsibility that comes with technological and scientific power. Frankenstein is a cautionary tale about the potential for ambition and scientific discovery to be destructive when not tempered with ethical consideration and caution. So, in other words, our pursuit of forbidden knowledge can lead to disastrous results. Not to sound that dark, but I do feel as
Yeah.
if, in my opinion, AI is the monster. And
Mm.
just for the record, by the way, Frankenstein in the book is Victor Frankenstein. The monster is never known as Frankenstein, despite what pop culture has done. I just had to throw that in there because it's one of my pet peeves.
Yeah, no, glad you shared that tidbit with us. And yeah, wow. That just gave me a whole different perspective to hear from this historical recollection how serious this really can be. And, with anything, right? There usually is this really great idea and well-intentioned individuals that come up with things that are going to make the human experience easier. And the one thing I've noticed when that happens is there's always going to be unintended consequences. And if we're not really careful and we don't really frame things in a way to kind of think ahead and think how this could impact us from all angles, we could end up with problems, which is what you're sharing with the whole analogy of Frankenstein here.
Oh,
Because at the end,
absolutely.
yeah, because at the end of the day, those that are in charge of the creation have to be sure to have those considerations in place for things that could potentially go amiss,
Well,
for lack of better words.
Kristen, just to throw it in too, if you remember in Frankenstein, basically once the doctor creates his creature,
Mhm.
he leaves immediately. He's
Mhm.
horrified by what he's created and then basically puts that creature out into the world to fend for itself. And again,
Mhm.
this is a very melodramatic way of looking at it, but the reality is what we've created with AI, I don't think we know what we have thrust upon the world. And if it is a positive impact on the world, we need to educate much more as to how it's positive, as opposed
Mhm.
to, just taking those two separate answers. The AI answer is something that sounds good in theory, but
Right.
it doesn't have any practicality to it.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, just looking at it's taking over in a sense so many industries, and I know we're going to talk about that a little further here. Um, we do talk about it in a little bit, but there's so many areas being impacted, right? There's so many areas where humans were once relevant, where
Mm-hmm.
AI is creating this momentum that is stripping away some of the core fundamental aspects of the human experience.
Absolutely. I would tend to agree with that.
Yeah, it's such a concern. So, in case our listeners are confused, I'm not against AI. If that's, something people are trying to decipher as they're listening to this episode. I do believe that advancement in technology is what keeps a society moving forward. Advancement in anything, right? In the medical industry, and I mean, knowledge is power. That's what it's all about, but there have to be certain safeguards. And at one point, we have to look at which parts are encroaching upon humanity in general, and what's the direction and what's the purpose for humanity's evolution if you're replacing it by technologies that are, you know, dumbing down the human experience, is what I would say.
Well, I
Oh
would
man.
just to say that I do agree with Douglas and actually with what you just said now. I mean, part of the larger issue is the lack of education about these systems that are, just being thrown out there.
Mhm.
It's great that technology is advancing, and it's great that we have the ability to automate tasks that, might seem mundane or, ordinary. But with that has to come just the education and the education of the masses, not just of the people who have direct contact with it or who are creating it.
Yeah, that
It
has
has
to
to
be the
trickle down.
future. That has to be the future.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can remember, this is a different topic, but in college, I was studying for my MBA at the time. And we had to take, it was part of our curriculum to take a course in ethics and marketing and ethics in business. And it was so important because, for example, the topic that was really focused on for one of our case studies was marketing of cereals to children, and looking at that consumer propaganda and targeted marketing strategy, and how it basically had parents going down the aisle and their children wanted, I won't name all the cereal companies, they'll probably show up on my doorstep, but there's a bunch that are targeted towards children. And that marketing was geared to grab the kid, not necessarily the parent, because the majority of the parents knew, oh, these sugary cereals are not healthy for my children. But the angling was going after the youth, and the youth are much more susceptible to buying into certain things because they're more I would say, I don't want to say that they don't understand, but they're more susceptible to being pulled in based off of impulse and things of that nature, just because of their growth and development and where they are in their life. And so my concern that sort of comes over into this lane too is the ethical and moral aspect, which I know we'll talk about that as well a little bit later, but the ethical and moral aspect that's here. Because again, I'm seeing even with my teenagers, and my young adults, everyone's going to AI for everything. And even some of the colleges have had to put some things in place to say, okay, you need to share if this was AI content or if this is your own content. There's
Mhm.
topic of plagiarism. Even as a publisher, when I'm going into Amazon, for example, and I'm doing my publishing for my books, I literally have to say whether or not this was AI generated content. There's a different process if your content is AI generated. Now, thankfully, for all of my books and all of my content I publish, I never have to say yes. I always create my own. But I've also noticed it with YouTube now too. When I'm posting videos, for example, so once we post this episode up on YouTube, it'll ask me if any part of this was using AI. And I just find that interesting because they're trying to collect data and metrics, I'm sure, on the use of AI, but the originality is getting lost, I think, in translation because the content being pushed out of AI, just as Douglas has, shared with us, we've invited our third party here, AI, to give us some answers in today's podcast. Who's feeding the information, right?
Well,
Because,
we are. They've been gathering
right.
content for years, and it's just there's jobs right now where you are literally hired to provide content for AI. So it's just a matter of how they disseminate it once they do it in that very sterile, technical way, where it's
Mm-hmm.
almost like a disclaimer that you would read or a non-compete that you would read, or the language is worded in a way where, am I being told something here, or is the person telling me this just protecting themselves for any
Mm-hmm.
kind of liability?
Mm-hmm. And oftentimes this content that's being fed may not be what you would have thought or said, but if you're hearing something enough and you're being exposed to something enough, you're conditioning. And so people are being conditioned to accept these pre-canned responses, right? For lack of a better term. Oh boy, there's so much here. All right, so let's jump into um, the future of AI. Let's talk a little bit about that. So the leaders of technology do not appear to be slowing down with the development and rolling out advancements in technology every day. It seems like there's a new feature, there's a new company. I mean, there's a few that are popular that everybody knows. I don't endorse anybody, so I won't throw out names here, but there's a lot of engines that search engines and AI technologies that are kind of the go-tos, right? And then you have your techie folks who have some spin-offs and some developers creating other ones. But where do you see the future of AI heading?
Well, to my dismay, AI will become an ever-growing presence in our lives. There's no denying that. The truth is that whether we like it or not, it's here to stay. I see further automation of jobs and everyday
Okay.
tasks once conducted by human beings. I see an ever-growing surveillance and a growing demand to stand down and just obey, just go
Mm,
with what you're being told, not question anything. I think
mm,
that we have only to look back at some of the greats that have been discussed today
mhm,
to glean what the future holds for us.
mm. Yeah, so really important that you point that out. History repeats itself. It just always does. And we have to pay attention. And yes, we can continue to move forward as a human race, but we also have to, again, just what we've talked about in some of these concerns today, like where are the right and left lines here? Where do we get to continue to grow and expand the minds of our young people and our society in general, right? If we're going to be force fed content regularly in the sense of making things easier. I mean, for example, I joke all the time, but I'll be talking to my parents and they'll ask a question. I'm like, well, the answer's on Google. And they're like, what? I'm like, and for example, another thing that happened the other day, and again, this is translatable stuff. I literally got locked out of the house and I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't have my phone on me. Whose phone number do I have memorized that I
Oh,
can
forget
call?
it.
Right? Because
No one's.
as it stands, I can pick up my phone and I just hit a name and it dials. So simple things like what used to be, I mean, as a kid, you used to go to school, you had to memorize your address, you had to memorize your phone number. There were certain things you needed to know because if you didn't know them, you didn't get there. There were paper maps. There wasn't a GPS, right? But
Yeah.
we have gotten so accustomed now. I mean, and I'm horrible. I have zero sense of direction. So I'll get in the car and I could know where I'm going, and it's a just natural reaction to plug in to the GPS to figure out where I'm going because the GPS can now tell me if there's, a accident or a traffic jam or, police in the area, whatever the case might be. And we've become, as a society, I think, so reliant on technology that it's slowly crippling us and our ability to function. Um, We could go all the way back to, for example, just basic survival skills. If you go back to your grandparents, even your parents' generations, they knew how to garden. They knew how to, Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, basic survival things. We don't,
Hmm.
most of us don't know how to do that kind of stuff anymore because you can just go to the store and buy what you need, or you can, look up and Google the answer, how to start a fire. I mean, how many of us understand some of these basic things? It's something that's getting lost as I think we continue to evolve because we've become so highly technical that some of the basic life skills are disappearing.
I would tend to agree with that, and not only that, it's the times where you don't want to engage with AI, and you find that you're watching a TV show, and you have the option to engage with that commercial and purchase whatever is on the screen.
Mm.
It's you know being watched, or the idea that Alexa might be hearing your conversations. It's all those times
Yes.
that you opt not to engage with AI, but it's kind of like in your face there, whether you want it or not.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes to talk about memories too. So many times, I find myself trying to remember, oh yeah, when did I go here? When did I do that? And I find myself picking up my phone, looking through my pictures, looking through
Right.
what Google's set up for me, whatever story. And I'm like, oh, that was 2 years ago. So more and more, my memory is dependent on, this little computer I have on my phone,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a growing concern too, because I want to hold on to my memory as long as possible.
It also greatly, relegates the physical activity in life to almost non-existent.
Mm-hmm.
We were watching something the other day, and as I'm watching it, an ad floats in through the side, and to Nivea's point, it literally became the next click for me was that I could click on that product and probably have it at my house in like within 2 days.
Yes.
So I do think that, and I know we're going to touch on mental health, but I think
Mhm.
mental health to me also begins very much through the lack of physical activity. So this is only feeding that addiction.
Yeah. And both of you made such good points. If you look back to youth of years past, children were outside playing. They were out getting fresh air. They were exploring. They were like little nature, adventurers. And
Mhm.
now there's so much force feeding, whether it's, you can go just to any restaurant or store or anywhere out in public now, and you're going to see little children, even in strollers, with either an iPad in front of them, playing on their parents' phone, if they're older, sitting watching video games. And it's completely, especially with our youth, since your mind is much more suggestible, they're being programmed. They're being pre-fed certain things. It's created this, and this is going to go in a whole different direction, but so we're here, so let's do it. In the health and wellness space, right? So now everybody's become so much more sedentary. There's less movement, there's rise of obesity, there's lack of thought, the information that the children are learning, whether it be through school or, I mean, these video games, the technology, it's teaching them. TikTok, for goodness sakes. I mean, I have a girlfriend that's so funny. She calls me, she's like, if it's not on the TikTok, it's not true. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like just regular news, right? It's all goes into that propaganda space of whoever is sharing whatever that is, playing on suggestible minds, the impulse control issues, and it's got the brain firing. And it'd be interesting to see the neurological studies on impact of all of this on an individual, because I do believe there's certain things that are being, set off in the brain and fired to get people to do exactly like what you just both said. There's an ad that comes up, and all of a sudden you want to purchase this thing that you never even needed. Like it's
Hmm.
Exactly.
Yes.
brand new thing. I've fallen victim plenty of times. So I'm talking
I
about
think we all
myself here
have.
too. Yeah. And especially, if you're looking at different times of the day, your brain is more suggestible than others. So as you get closer to that evening time, and that's why certain commercials will change towards the evening, and they won't be played during the day because your mind is more opened, it's more suggestible just because of what's physiologically happening in the body at that time as you start to wind down for bed. So it would be interesting to see what types of things are being fed at different times using AI marketing strategies as well. The other thing that came up as you guys were talking, I was thinking about on Facebook how many people are posting their AI pictures, which is so fascinating to me. I'm like, do we not love ourselves enough that we want to use these false fake pictures? But even beyond that, when I see that and I see people commenting like, oh my gosh, you're so gorgeous or you're so handsome, I'm like, wow, we have gotten into a space where AI is creating almost like an avatar of you, this
Mhm.
romanticized image and version, and it's now almost separating true self with this made up character version of you, and all of them are similar in the fact that they are making you look younger.
Mhm.
There's a level of perfection and beauty that comes from these different images. And it makes me think back to, and I know you both will appreciate this. The years where you had all the supermodels in the magazines. I can remember as a kid getting CoverGirl, and everybody wanted to look like Nikki Taylor and Pamela Anderson and all the gorgeous girls because they had this perfect image and this perfect body. At least that was the perception at that time in my life. And so I'm thinking of this being very similar, whereas back in the day it was the magazines and the models and the centerfolds and all the things going on there. And now it's these AI generated images of what you would look if you were 20 or 30 years younger. And this insatiable need to hold on to this perfect image of an individual, which is kind of detracting, in my personal opinion, from the beauty of aging. Not
Um,
everybody's a Yeah, not everybody's afforded the opportunity to age, and aging is supposed to be a badge of honor, but now it's like we're almost, I guess, shaming it in a way.
agree.
Yeah. Yeah, I know I went on a sidetrack there. Sorry.
Yeah, it was great.
This stuff is really stressing me out. And I mean, I'm an Aquarian. I am all about progression and moving the world forward and all the things, but it just has really got me concerned watching all of this stuff. So, but I also understand if you don't participate in certain advancements that you get left behind, and it's that's how it goes. It's sort of like in a job, right? If you don't continue to move forward with what's happening in the job market and embrace new technologies and new things happening, then you're kind of considered a dinosaur and you're pushed aside. But at the same time, there still has to be some autonomy and some creative content happening in the world. So, all right, let's jump onto mental health. This is a really hot topic right now, I think, in this space. So, mental health continues to be a topic of discussion that's become such a priority for so many. It doesn't matter which age range we're talking about here, it's just a hot topic. So, I want to ask you both, do you believe that AI is having an impact on mental health?
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I mentioned this before, I touched on it. It is a fact that our over-reliance on technology is leading to decreased physical activity, which of course does affect mental health. With our increased screen time, we are living a more sedentary lifestyle, which can negatively impact physical health and in turn create the mental health problem. Technology use has been linked to higher levels of anxiety and depression. Also, it's potentially due to social media pressures. We've discussed that, cyberbullying, and social comparisons, which is just what you were just referring to.
Yeah.
When we rely on digital communications, it can lead to a decrease in what has always scared the you know what out of me, the lack of face-to-face interactions, because this causes loneliness and social
Mhm.
isolation. There's something called, I don't know if you've heard of this, automation bias.
Mm,
It's actually, it translates to people favoring technology's output over their own judgment.
yeah.
And and that doesn't even matter if technology is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
They're
Mm-hmm.
still going to favor it over their own judgment. There's
Yeah.
also something called automation complacency, which is a reduced sense of vigilance and responsibility when monitoring the technology you use. And this is going to lead to errors being overlooked.
Mm-hmm.
Some examples of this is a reduction in skills, decreased productivity, and over dependence on technology can lead to a loss of basic skills. We've seen this, such as problem solving and navigating without the digital assistance.
Mm-hmm.
They've rendered themselves, unless they have the digital assistance, they feel like they haven't covered it, or
Mm-hmm.
they're lazy and they don't want to do the research. So
Mm-hmm.
the constant digital notifications and the temptation to multitask
Mm-hmm.
will lead to a lack of focus. And it also
Mm-hmm.
leads to, more procrastination. The realistic style of AI can lead some vulnerable individuals to develop delusional thinking,
Mm-hmm.
or what is referred to as AI-induced psychosis.
Mm,
And this is which is where people actually believe AI is a higher power or a real partner, which
mm,
leads to what? Breaks with reality. And most importantly to me, and I think Nivea, and I'm sure yourself, is that AI lacks genuine human empathy, judgment, and moral responsibility. And we don't want to be completely negative, so I'll let Nivea talk about some of the positive impacts and
yeah.
benefits. That's okay. It's not
Yes,
all negative,
absolutely.
Kristen.
Yes, let's do it.
Well, some of the positive impacts and benefits of AI,
Mhm.
we've discussed some at the beginning, but processing vast amounts of patients' data, genetics, medical history, lifestyle, AI can help develop tailored treatment plans and predict patient responses to
Mm,
different interventions, optimizing recovery chances. AI tools can automate administrative tasks, scheduling, documentation, and provide data-driven insights to human therapists, reducing professional burnout and allowing clinicians to follow more on direct patient care. For some
mm,
individuals, interacting with AI chatbot feels more anonymous and less stigmatizing than talking to a human professional.
mm. There's a lot that we just had uncovered here in this piece of the conversation. So I'm going to walk back and start with Douglas, and then Nivea, we're going to come back to some of the things that you just shared. A couple things that stood out to me that you said, Douglas, were um, basically what I'll translate into disregarding our own intuition, right? So you shared a little bit about looking to AI as the one that provides the answers and not being quite confident in what we're thinking or feeling and going into that space to get that answer. And as I think of that and just kind of unpack that a little bit, I think of the challenges that are going to come with self-doubt, self-confidence, self-esteem, this almost constant questioning of oneself and not really being sure. And when we do that, it's like our soul already knows the answers. It knows what's right for us individually. And I'm going to be very curious to see what research over time, I mean, fast forward 10, 20 years from now, how that's truly impacted how individuals view themselves, as well as their ability to feel strong in who they are as an individual versus having some sort of pre-scripted way of living, right? It's sort of what I would call living in a program, which in the space of my other areas that I work in, there's a lot of programs that I think are pre-scripted that run within us, whether they're societal norms or, what's deemed to be acceptable or not acceptable versus what allows you to be autonomous, be individual, and contribute to society from your own unique perspective. So that really came to mind when you were talking. Also the lack of focus. I thought of the analogy that I've heard often when I see the different posts on social media, where people are joking and they're saying that my brain is like a computer system. There's too many windows opening and none of them are functioning, right? And so that makes me wonder how we're going to see that impact on things like ADHD and the ability, hyperactivity, and things like that because there's so much stimulation happening. So I'll be curious to see that. You also mentioned believing AI as a higher power, and that is huge. And the impacts, I'd upset too many people if I went too far into that topic. So I won't go too far into that topic. But I will say that I think that there is some concern and potential with the different generations roaming the earth that our youth and the younger are going to be impacted the most by this this experience, which is almost stifling. I'm just curious to see how growth is going to happen, personal growth and development, if people are being fed narratives constantly and scripts. So those were a couple of my thoughts on what you said, Douglas. That's what was coming to mind as you were talking.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, yeah. I just started getting more stressed out as I
I'm
as I
sorry
heard
about
this. I was like,
that. Yeah,
like,
there's a
oh my
lot of
gosh.
concerns. There's definitely a lot
Yeah,
of concern.
they really are. And that's the whole purpose of this conversation, is to just really think through. And Nivea, I mean, you were sharing so many important things. There are advancements that can help make things more streamlined, process improvement efforts where AI can come in and it can cut through some of the data and it can bring together cohesive metric and data based informed information that could truly be life saving in some instances. It could be providing more insight into things that, we may have been working on for years and decades and can just kind of crack some codes, whether it's in the health space, whether it's in pulling information together, because there's so much information in the world now. I mean, back in the day, you just went to the library and you got your little microfiche and you just stuck it in the machine, and all of a sudden you had, a book or a reference or a resource. Well, now we've got so much information with the global experience. You're not limited to what's just available in your area, and so I can see where that can provide so much help. Also, even in the job space, we and we're going to talk about that in a second too, but there's spaces where we could use manpower differently and we could really figure out how to accelerate some things. I mean, there's so many different areas. It's literally infiltrating, I think, every aspect of life that is happening right now. So I can see all of the excitement and the good. Again, I think it just comes down to balance. It comes down to figuring out that perfect level of balance and harmony where there isn't too much, but yet it could be a tool to support, just like we use a pen or we use a pencil so that we can write and we can record things. Use it as a tool, not as your end all be all. I think that's, something that really needs to be considered for sure.
Agree. Well said.
Yeah. Wow. I thought we were getting on here to talk about a few things, and now I feel like we're in like some really deep space. I think I'm gonna need a couple days to unpack and process all of this. My goodness. All right, so let's talk about, where do you think the biggest concerns are?
I would start with job displacement. That's one of my biggest concerns.
Okay.
Automation driven by new technologies is clearly leading to job losses in various sectors. I also think vulnerability to failures. As we've discussed, a completely reliance on technology means that system failures or cyber attacks can cause widespread disruption, as
Hmm.
seen in many examples like airport chaos.
Hmm.
Then we have the ethical and social risks, where technology could be used for surveillance, manipulation, to fuel division, which can have negative implications for privacy, security, and human agency.
Mm,
There's also the misinformation and bias. AI models can generate convincing but false or biased information, which
mhm,
can be particularly dangerous for vulnerable populations who may internalize this content and act on it. The
mm,
aforementioned psychological dependency and social withdrawal we have discussed.
mhm,
I know, Nivea, you mentioned harmful outcomes as well.
mhm,
Yeah, I did. There have been high profile and tragic cases where individuals in crisis express suicidal thoughts to AI chatbots that,
mhm.
instead of providing help, offered harmful advice or encouragement, sometimes leading them to suicide.
Yeah, and I was gonna bring that up at some point, so I'm glad you shared that with us because there have been instances, especially more recently, where there have been questions about the whole impact AI is having on as particularly I've seen it more so in the youth where there have been suicides and there have been questions about is AI, to blame for this? And that's going to be a dicey conversation, but people are going directly to this source because this is the new place to get information. And so this comes back to that conversation about ethics and legalities and monitoring what your youth are looking at, and even adults. I mean, this has been happening across the board. It just seems like the teen stories are the one that have been gaining a lot of traction and attention for sure. The job thing, totally agree. I see that happening. There are a lot of companies that have been pulling data and information together, collecting from the employees what they do and how they do it. And there is some concern that in the background, that information is being taken and used to create solutions that would downsize. A lot of different areas and industries are being impacted by that. It seems like that is a hot topic right now too. Um, so yeah, there are a lot of concerns, but there's
Yeah,
also some good. We did
There
talk
is.
about some
there
good.
is.
We did
Yeah.
talk about some good. Just like, it was really great when we didn't have to sit there and listen to the dial up when we tried to get on the internet. We got
The old modem,
faster
yeah.
speed, right? And that has been, really, really wonderful. So, um, yeah, these are all really, really important topics that we've covered today. So, what I would say, and I apologize here, just dropped my pen. AI is a fast-moving train. The technology continues to move at an accelerated speed. I don't think we're going to see it stop. Honestly, I think this is where we are. We're going forward. We have to embrace what's happening, whether we like it or not. This is where we are in this time and place in our human history. I believe that when we use AI appropriately, then it can, and appropriate is a vast definition depending on who we're talking to. If it's used in a balanced and integrated way, I think it truly can be an asset. So I wanted to kind of just, leave a few thoughts on a high note there that it's not all bad. But we did cover a lot in this episode. And so for our listeners, we're going to provide, some reference links in the bio if you want to connect with the Pear Tree Project, Douglas and Nivea further to have these discussions or just find out more about what they're doing in their project. I definitely I definitely want you guys to share that information. And of course, I always want to thank you both for coming in. We have great conversations, great topics, very enlightening, very in depth. I think we leave our listeners with a lot to ponder and think about. But I want to give you an opportunity before we wrap up to just kind of share one of your, messages with our listeners about the impact of AI on the human experience, and just give us some concluding thoughts before we wrap up for today.
Well, thank you, Kristen. And I don't want to be completely negative, but I'm concerned. And I would imagine most have, do, and will claim that the removal of human error is the paramount provision of artificial intelligence. And that's hard to argue.
Hmm.
John McCarthy is widely considered the father of AI for coining the term artificial intelligence. However, the groundwork was laid by other pioneers. Let's give them some credit. Alan Turing, who proposed the concept of machine intelligence in 1950, and Marvin Minsky, who co-founded MIT's AI lab and built the early neural network. I'm not sure these men could have
Mm.
known the impact their framework would provide future generations to have to endure. But yesterday, what I am positive of is that I heard the sound of rustling leaves across the pavement, and it filled me with, anticipation and comfort. So as soon as I was done hearing that sound, I went to the computer and I asked AI, and he returned, well, it returned a similar, yet a little bit void of warmth response. And the response was, the sound of rustling leaves across the pavement is often considered a quintessential autumnal sound, frequently described in an evocative and positive term across literature and general sentiment.
Mm.
Wonderful answer. But for me, I think we need to remember, and again, I'm going to quote one of my heroes, Mr. Rod Serling, for civilization to survive, the human race has to remain civilized. So
Mm.
let's not allow AI to make us barbaric, irrelevant, and ultimately obsolete.
Obsolete.
You
Mm.
know, Kristen, thank you for your graciousness and your
Yeah.
time. We are the peartreeproject.com. That's how you reach us always.
Mhm.
We thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes, thank you both. As always, it's a pleasure. And again, if you could just share, right before we go, a little snippet about what the Pear Tree Project is. And again, just give them that reference of how to reach you one more time, just in case they missed it, because I always want to make sure people can get in contact with our guests.
Absolutely. We are a project created on passion. We refer to ourselves jokingly as the antisocial social media, but what we're really looking to do is exchange ideas, grow through human interactions, whether it be photos, stories, vignettes, haikus, whatever you want to share. It is literally to maintain the human connection, but through technology. And the best way to reach us is thepeartreeproject.com.
Perfect. Thank you again both for being here
Thank
and
you,
for
Kristen.
Thank you.
yes, yes. And for our listeners, thank you so much for taking time to listen to this episode of Surviving the Human Experience podcast. Until next time, be well and stay blessed.